Cut them all the way. Yeah. We'll begin. All right, Dow, come here. Come here, take your spot. Lay down. All right. So welcome. Yoga Practice 101. So I have decided to offer this beginner's guide as a way to sort of help students that are new or students that are just willing to see with new eyes their yoga practice from a broader and a deeper perspective. So if you start seeking to understand yoga, you may find it's confusing. You may find that, is this yoga? Is this yoga? Is this yoga? Are these goats a part of yoga? And how do they fit in, right? Or is yoga all about poses? I've heard that it's a spiritual practice. Maybe you felt something that's more like a connection to something that is deeper during your yoga practice. But oftentimes there's not a whole lot of time to get to the whys and the more specific whats of yoga practice when you're just stopping in for a drop-in class. So, I'm going to sort of speak in a way that is general towards beginners. And hopefully that allows everyone to just for the next 2 hours, to put aside what you feel like you might know yoga to be, and instead open up to what I'm saying. Because one of the first things that it constitutes a yoga practice is sort of taking on this disposition of an experimenter. And your laboratory is this one, the one that you got, your body and your life. And so we're going to sort of take yoga off of the rectangular plastic mat and put it into your life. And so as I'm talking, I'll give an overview of what we'll do during the whole session. But as I'm talking, what comes up for you on the inside and what sort of rings true through what you experience internally about what I say, that's what's most important. So what resonates with you and which part resonates with you is what I want to call your attention to. So as I'm talking, you'll have all sorts of things. You'll have an inner dialogue going on, possibly. I don't mean to assume that you have an inner dialogue going on. If you don't, I'm jealous. But if you do, then that's normal. And this is a place where we start to bring what is inside to our conscious awareness. So what's going on below the surface? So that means memory or images or knowings, senses of like an inner intuitive knowing about something could happen on the inside. Like, man, she's right, I should do that. Or she's full of it on this one. What are they talking about? Right? That's going to be going on the inside all the time. And I invite you now to just open up to that, open up to your inner experience and what's going on for you at the same time as being open to me and what I'm saying, and that it could be good and it could be helpful. And mostly what it will be is my experience, because as a yoga teacher, I feel like that's the main thing I have to offer, is that, by golly, I am trying. I'm trying to practice yoga, and through that trying, I've learned sort of what are the main pitfalls and how it can easily go wrong. I've had teachers that have helped me along the way, and I'll hopefully draw and shine a light on the role of a teacher and the importance of a teacher in a yoga practice. But the reason why it's important to have someone outside of you is that we're studying self-deception. We're studying the ways that we tend not to see ourselves clearly. And that happens in a physical way, like, oh, I didn't notice that my knee was going in that direction when I was doing this lunging pose, or I didn't notice that I always do this with my shoulder, or in a mental emotional way. I didn't realize that I'm always falling into this particular pattern. So yoga is really about coming to know yourself. And most, if not all, of the perennial traditions say something like that. Know thyself to gain a life that is more free of suffering and more free of pain, because you're no longer fighting against who and what you are, but rather using and utilizing and being in loving acceptance of this body and this particular life to experience the wholeness of what might be possible for you in your life. So in the explanation of this, I talked about how you can develop posture mastery. And so we'll talk about posture through doing posture. So the first part of class after this introduction will be a guided practice. And through that guided practice, I'm hoping to help you understand some important parts of posture practice, which is, I'll give it away at the beginning, it's more important to have an awareness of function and not form. So we can tend to think of yoga practice as to do with these shapes. And I need to make my shape, the body, my body look like the shape that is being made, that I see other people doing on the cover of Yoga Journal, or wherever you see, or on people's Instagram, wherever you see a shape, oh, that's a good shape, oh, that's a bad shape. Just, if you can, forget about it, because it really is not important. The postures are a vehicle. The postures are a tool for an inner awareness of a certain kind of way that you can take action. And so the postures are about training yourself to take action in this very particular way. And we'll talk about that over the course of the class. But it's not about the particular form or the shape that your body is making. More important in my world is what your joints are doing and what your joints can do. So we're looking to develop in our yoga practice a balance of mobility and stability. So at your joints, you want to be able to move through the full range of motion that each particular joint has available to it. In a way, access the potential of your joints so that you can gather all the information from the world around you that's available to you through your joints. So really quickly, I'll breeze over the kinds of things that are important to me. Each of your joints has a native function. And when that native function gets inhibited in some way through injury or through lack of movement in that particular way, the function that's supposed to be at that joint moves to another joint. So I'll just breeze through it and hope that you see my Taz socks. Mobile joint moves through a wide range of motion, hinges and circles. Stable joint, only meant to hinge, not meant to move side to side. If it moves side to side, injury and pain occur. Mobile joint moves through a large range of motion. Stable joint, not supposed to move through any ranges of motion, supposed to be supported and stable. And if you're having sacral pain, it's likely because there's too much movement happening in a stable joint, likely because there's too much stability in this joint that's supposed to be mobile. So just to use this as the example, if I don't have full range of motion in my hip socket, it's going to cause movement to happen in the sacral joint that's not supposed to happen in the sacral joint. And so you can, if that's happening to you, you can do 1,000 warrior poses and it won't change until you have this magical thing happen to you where all of a sudden something that you couldn't feel before, now you can feel. Now you have in your awareness the fact that your hip socket doesn't have its full range of motion. And that probably that pain in your sacrum has to do with too much shifting side to side due to the lack of mobility in another area. So things can get more and more personalized to you by how much information you have about you and your body. So it's great to have a lot of information about what a warrior pose looks like, but more valuable to have information about what your hip joints are like, or in your sacral joint is like. So all of the poses are to direct your attention in a particular way to a particular activation or particular mobilization. So the practice that we'll do is to walk you step by step through doing a posture that is pretty hard, kind of thought of to be a more advanced posture depending on how you do it, a warrior 3. Does anybody know what a warrior 3 looks like? So I'll show you, because in my yoga world, the pose names don't happen very often. I'm not saying the pose names, I'm helping you create the form and the alignment inside of the pose that's going to help you feel what your type of mobile or stable balance is or is not. So this is a variation of warrior 3 that we'll be doing today. But we'll be doing it in a way where I walk you step by step through feeling what it's like to be in that particular shape in different foundations. So you just saw that warrior, and now see this position. Are the positions much different? Well, what's different is that the stability of the floor supports me to find the internal activations that are necessary to be able to hold your spine in that position against gravity. So you've got gravity now pushing on your body in a way that it doesn't if you have the floor underneath you. And so I'll give you detailed steps about the activation inside the pose and in the alignment inside the posture in more stable foundations before we reach the peak posture, so to say, where hopefully you have now this reference of what it's like to be activated in this position. And then when we build the pose, which is kind of how I think of designing a class, building a pose up so that you've had this repeated experience in your mind-body awareness of what it's like to hold this particular alignment and activation. And then when we come to the pose, you'll have had a much better idea of what your particular capacity is. So you'll felt, oh, I can take my leg up this far, or I can't take my leg up this far. So that you'll know how to feel for where your unique edge is in the pose and take yourself to that place. So that's how we're kind of allowing for this idea that instead of putting your body into this particular shape, you're looking for this particular functionality of your joint. You're looking for this joint to be an extension and this joint to be in flexion. And you'll be able to start to recognize where your particular limitations are once we've walked through all the steps. So that will be sort of a way of experientially learning about the alignment and activation that's inside of this pose, and in some way or another inside of every pose, because it's what's known in yoga as bandha, or this activation and containment of the core in a very particular way that builds and contains heat and holds the spine in alignment. And so we want to be able to hold that stable activation in all sorts of different shapes. The shapes challenge how hard it is to hold that activation. So we'll start again with it being really easy and then work our way up. And so that will be the embodied practice part, and that'll be about an hour long. And so whenever I'm giving the cues, I'll give them in a very specific way. I'll say, put your feet exactly here and activate like this, and now breathe and map your movement to this particular flow. And then I'll leave some time for you to feel what's happening in that posture, because something that happens if we're constantly whizzing through the poses, you never get to that point where you really settle into it and you feel what the alignment and the activation is really all about, and allow your nervous system to have an imprint made on it. And that can really only happen then through the connection of the breath. So there'll be a big emphasis on this development of breath and the movement of your body in unison with the breath in a really particular way. Not in a way that's forcing the breath or mapping the breath to the movement, but rather the other way around, mapping the movement to the breath and keeping a smooth, steady pace of breath as the guide for how fast your poses move. And so the hope with that is that if you kind of get this feeling for your own pace of breath, your own rhythm, and your own body's capacity and how to feel for your own body's capacity and where your edge is, that then in any class that you're in, you'll be able to modify what's happening to be appropriate for you. It's hard to do, but it is possible in class to, have the whole class sort of moving like a choo-choo train, at whatever speed that they're going, and for you to take this internal pacing. And that's what I hope for you to gain in our time together, this sense for your own pace. And then from that, we can figure out what sort of yoga styles might be appropriate for you to explore a little bit further. But really, the hope is that you can have an understanding of posture practice that transcends styles. So it's not about Ashtanga or Ashtanga Vinyasa or restorative or yin or yang power flow or yang power flow sculpt or, however it goes, all the different variations that are, coming through the pacing. They're what influence the pacing. They're what influence the posture choice. But hopefully if you gain this understanding, you'll be able to make whatever style class you go into work for you and have a better sense for what style you're hoping will match with the goals that you're hoping for from your yoga practice. So this is how we'll work through the idea of making your own adjustments, is understanding the effort level that yoga is trying to teach us. And that comes through a text that's known as the Yoga Sutra, which is a common sort of influence on the yoga that we practice today. We don't have time to go into all of that, but as we're practicing, I'll be explaining and using these influences to help you understand the type of effort that you'll want to make inside your yoga pose, so that you can know when you're moving into over effort or when maybe lazy yogi has taken over and you're under efforting, right? So we're trying to find a particular kind of effort that's not too much. It's not giving 110 all the time, no matter what, because that's what we do. And it's not no effort. Oh, what does it matter anyway? Oh, life's happening to me. But rather an effortless effort, an energizing of the muscle that is actively opposing the force of gravity, but not overdoing it in any way. So not no effort, not over effort. It's what we'll call effortless effort. So this engagement and this aliveness of your muscles and your joints that is able to activate and unactivate, deactivate, or whatever you might say, more like a dimmer switch than like an on-off switch. So it's not just like you're doing it or you're not doing it. You're doing a very particular kind of effort that you could sustain for a long period of time. And your yoga practice is about training in that particular kind of effort. And you'll know it because you'll come off of it in all sorts of different ways, and then I'll give you cues to re-engage in this very particular energized way. Okay. And then at the end, we'll get into what yoga tells us about the mind and about lifestyle. So we'll get into the contemplative practice of yoga, and I'll give you a breeze overview of what are known as the 8 limbs and where posture practice fits in all 8 of the limbs of yoga practice, and how to start having a contemplative practice. So one that works on you on the inside, in your inner life, like I was talking about. And this is what really has the power to transform your thinking and transform your perception. And it should be said here at the beginning that I'm talking about a yoga practice that is about transformation. So the goal of yoga, it could be, get out of pain in my shoulder. I've been referred to yoga by my doctor because I hurt. And there's a physical hurt and an actual pain that you're hoping it can help with. And that it can be the doorway to what is likely mental, emotional pain and suffering, and has to do more with the way that you think and perceive, and more to do with your particular life experience than just what's happened to your physical body. And so it begins to give you this insight into the mind and how your mind is working. And we'll talk about that at the end, after we kind of come into a particular kind of attention through practice. Okay, any questions about that which we're about fixing to do? Okay. Any questions from the online land? No. Okay, cool. We might need, I don't know if we do. I think it's pretty okay. So to start off class, I'd like to do a few little tests. And these tests are to help you, through feeling, recognize what happens from your yoga practice. So we're going to do our peak posture here at the beginning without all of the activations, without all of the cues, without all of the things that I'm talking about doing. So I'll show you what we'll do, and then you guys can stand up and do it. And then as you're doing it, your job is to notice how it feels in your body and really get into what you're doing. The hope with the way that the class will go is that you can kind of totally put everybody else that's in this room out of your mind and attention and move into this deep feeling of your own body and what's happening in your own body. Something that can happen to us in yoga classes is if we're not getting the right cues or we're not picking it up, we're looking at everybody else to see what their shape is like so that we know what shape to make with our body. But in this case, I'm building it from the ground up in a way that hopefully allows you to stay fully immersed in your own experience. And this is a part of the important thing that yoga is training us to do. It's to hold our own attention, which is the most valuable currency that you have available to you. Your attention is what every advertiser is trying to pay for. And so you having a practice of consciously retrieving your attention from the outside world and attending your inner space is how you can really begin to know thyself and know that what you want is what you actually want, not just what Amazon has told you want, right? Or not just what your ads are being fed to you, so that you can have this inner compass as a guide rather than taking the shape that the outside world would have for you, which is one of buying things. Okay, so all right, everybody up, and we'll experiment a little bit with our first pose. And I won't give you a whole lot of instruction. Just stand on one foot and see if you can get your body parallel with the ground. And see how that goes. And I'm going to look. Good, and come up and switch feet. So notice how far down you go. See if you can notice where your leg is. Notice the quality of your balance or the lack of. Just be fully in your sensory experience. Really good. Okay, and now we'll do another little tester. So come out of that and lie down, and we'll lift the leg as high as you can lift it. And now make the shape, but on the ground. And you can see your foot and your leg here, right? So look at your foot and leg and just feel how high up they are. Feel what's going on in your hips and in your back in this position. Good, everybody looks good. All right, and then switch sides. So it's like you're kind of taking an inner before picture, right? So you could imagine through your perception and your felt sense of your body, snapping the way that this feels, in your mind-body imagery. Good. And then bring that leg down, and we'll have the lovely Sunny up as a demonstrator, so that should my cues not be clear, you can look up and be sure that you're in the right position generally. So we'll start face down with your right leg out to the right, your arms in goalposts, and your head turned to the right. So this is one of my favorite positions for grounding. And it's good for that because a ton of your body is in contact with the ground. So I like to think about this as like an SOS yoga pose. This is like, I'm not okay, right? I need something and I don't know what it is, but I know I need to stop doing whatever the heck it is I'm doing right now and come to settle. So this position where your knee is as high as your hip, so a little higher, Sunny, with the knee, and then your ankle is straight down from it. And so this is stretching in the hip, it's stretching across the chest, and it's stretching in the neck. And so just being in this position is a good way to support yourself in doing a breathwork practice, which is what we'll start with. So go ahead and take this position now, and we'll build our warriors.